Hi everybody, I'm Patryk, I'm front-end engineer. I'm really glad to be here. And at the beginning I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever asked, could you please provide steps to reproduce? Please raise your hands. Okay, so I see hands there, yeah, so we did it right. It always helps a lot, so the thing is pretty simple. So QA engineer comes to us, say, something went wrong, so could you please tell me how I can reproduce it myself? So maybe I can write some tests to cover it, maybe I can debug it and eventually fix it. And I have some cool statistics about it. So recently I spent like 80 hours during technical interviews, and I prepared statistics from 25 interviews. And during these interviews, we talk about such problems, essentially solving issues. So imagine you get support ticket that says that user cannot add a delivery address, for example. So what do you do? So people tell, I would try to reproduce the issue. And 83% of candidates said that they would try to reproduce the issue. Then we continue the discussion. What if you cannot reproduce the issue? Well, there are various of things you could do, and we think that monitoring is one of these. So we ask about it. And apparently only 37% of candidates know something about monitoring. What means something? Well, when we ask, how about monitoring? You know, I heard something about Sentry. Then I put this candidate here in this list. So this 37% know something about monitoring. It doesn't mean they use it. So having this together, this lead me to conclusion that we front-end engineers don't monitor our front-end applications. And this is my point of presentation. So we should monitor our front-end application. So you could say, so what? So if you don't monitor your application, you really don't understand what is going on with your front-end application in the production. And you don't know how your user interact with your application. You don't know their struggles. Maybe there is some issue going there. Maybe they have performance issue or something like this. And you cannot, you won't know that something went wrong. And if you have monitoring, you can build alerting on top of that, and you will be notified immediately when something went wrong. And eventually, having this, you can improve your business. I prepared story to cover this topic, and let's meet Tom, who is front-end engineer. And Tom will represent during this talk different people in different situations. Tom begins his work in the company. This is his first day. He always wanted to join the company. This was his dream, and finally he made it. So he started working there. He was playing with his app. He ought to develop. And apparently he discovered some problems. So let's imagine simple e-commerce app when you have checkout page. We have some header, maybe with search. We have terms and conditions checkbox. Below that we have some basket summary. And we have a summary on the right with checkout button. So our main character, Tom, thinks, oh my God, this is so badly positioned. I'll always forget about these freaking terms and conditions. I always go straight to the checkout, and then I have to maybe scroll to the top or move my cursor around here and there to actually accept these freaking terms and conditions and proceed with checkout. So he went to his colleague and he says, you know, this is a huge problem actually. I really struggle with that. I always forget about it, and when I forget about it, I have to move cursor a lot. This is so frustrating. And his colleague says, Tom, don't worry about it. It's there since forever. everybody got used to it. Nobody cares about it. Our users get used to it. You will get used to it as well. But then his colleague says, actually, we collect logs for that, so maybe we could check it. And Tom was astonished. What do you mean front-end logs? If you console log, there is only text in the browser and it's only on the client side. You will never get that. Oh, actually, you could do that. And you could do that pretty simply by implementing, for instance, your own endpoint. And instead of console logging, you can push data to that endpoint, and backend will log it for you. You could get any other tool like Google Analytics to actually cover that problem, or you could get more sophisticated and implement monitoring with Sentry. So going back to the problem, our friends tried to collect logs. They ran some queries, and they expect the result of queries where people click checkout button with actually not accepting terms and conditions, and the result is 50%. Told you so. So having this data, the team decided to move terms and conditions to near the checkout button. And even if it don't fix the issue where people click checkout without actually accepting terms and conditions, you still have better experience because they don't have to scroll up and move here and there, and they just click it right next to it. So that was really valuable lesson for Tom. He learned about collecting logs from frontend. He never thought about it. He never knew that this is possible, but now he learned. The story continues, and Tom is still working at the company. And after a few days, his colleague says, Tom, you know something about our company, so maybe you will do next release. How about it? And you know, releases are always scary, something may go wrong, but Tom's colleague says, don't worry, Tom, we have everything sorted out. Everything will be okay. So now is the time. Tom presses big red button and eventually really succeeds. Then our colleagues meets again during coffee talk, and Tom's colleague says, maybe we should check our monitoring after the release. So let's see what's going on. Maybe there is some problem. And apparently, there is significant increase in the homepage error count. So now our team can focus on roll back our application, and then eventually they see drop again. So the issue is fixed on the production, and the team may use the logs they collected before to find what went wrong, fix it, and eventually redeploy it. So that was second valuable lesson for Tom. He learned that you can actually use log to know about errors. The story continues. Tom still works at the company, and he really likes the idea of monitoring, so he checks it every once a while. And apparently there is significant increase in errors again. But he checks the logs and he sees that, oh, it's not my problem, it's actually backend. So he went to the backend team and says, hey guys, I see that the register endpoint is not working properly, could you look into it? And the colleague says, oh, well, we have actually problem, but it's not our problem. It's actually a different team. And Tom was again astonished, how do you know so quickly? Oh, you know, we have this thing called distributed tracing, and if you look closely, we monitor our entire system, and it's actually account service that is read. As you may see, we properly processed your request and propagated data, but then this account service responded with error. so we can let them know and they will fix it. Well, that was quick. I expected some ping pong there, and it is already in the right team. So that was, again, another valuable lesson for Tom. He learned about distributed tracing, where you can actually monitor your system as a whole and detect root causes immediately. The story continues. And Tom was playing with some network throttling. And apparently with network throttling, the app behaved really slow. And he went to his team and described the issue. And colleague says, you were playing with this network throttling. Who cares about slow internet? We are living in the 21st century. Everybody has fast internet, and there is no issue here, Tom. Don't worry about it. And Tom was thinking like, I think I'm having déjà vu. So he didn't want to surrender, and he started Googling something. He was sure that there is some possibility to check his audience. And apparently he learned about things like Web Vitals, and he learned that they consider the user internet and device and other things. It actually measures user experience. And there are things like LCP, FID, CLS, and they mean largest contentful paint, which means how fast user will see the page. First input delay, which means how fast user will be able to interact with the application. And there is cumulative layout shift, which means how the layout is stable. And he learned that you can grade them. They can be good, they may need improvement, and they can be poor. And apparently his audience uses really bad internet, and the Web Vitals are poor. So having this data, he went back to his team. Now they could focus on solution of this problem, and they worked together to get eventually good grade. And that was, again, valuable lesson for Tom. He learned about Web Vitals, how you can measure your user experience, and how it impacts your business. A few weeks later, Tom really liked the idea of monitoring, but he was thinking, oh my God, what am I even doing? So I check it every once in a while. Nothing really happens. It's so rare that something goes wrong. It's terrible waste of time. So he had an idea. There has to be an answer. And he actually started Googling or maybe asking ChatGPT what he can do about it. And he learned about alerting. He learned about that you can set up some thresholds that when broken, you will be notified. So he set it up. So he decided to put some thresholds. When homepage error count goes over some value, then you will get phone call. After that, he shares it with his team, and the team was really happy about it because they spent a lot of time as well, and it was huge wastage. So Tom get crown, maybe raise, or whatever it could be, and everyone was happy. And that was last valuable lesson for Tom, that having these 4 things, you can build alerting on top of it, and you will be notified immediately when something goes wrong. So let's sum this up. So as we could see in Tom's story, having monitoring and proper alerting will allow you to understand how users interact with your application. You will be able to detect any issue with, maybe there is some rendering problem, or maybe there is performance issue, and you will know immediately about it. And then you can reduce escalation or downtime and eventually improve your business. And here is my call to action. Monitor your front-end application. You won't regret it.
Thanks a lot. Do we have any questions to our speaker?
Okay, so I have a question. So what happens if you have an application that is not exposed to the internet? So you have like a internal application and you want to check the web vitals.
Okay, so you could implement it yourself. So essentially there is API within browser that reports web vitals, and you could actually push it to your backend. That's one thing. And other thing, you can self-serve monitoring. So for instance, Sentry is open source, and you can self-serve it on your closed network.
So Sentry is also monitoring web vitals, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I love the story, so I need to ask, have you drawn the pictures by yourself?
Yep, I use this tool that's called Excalidraw, yeah.
And the second one is like, would you recommend any solutions for those problems, like specific ones, like tech products or technologies? I'm not sure about problems that you detect in monitoring or monitoring itself. All you've listed, like if you would like name a couple of technologies that would help us to achieve those goals.
So for instance, Sentry, I like it and I recommend it because it's open source. So if you have limited budget, you can do that. There are more expensive ways to achieve that. And there is Grafana, there is New Relic, Datadog, other thing. Essentially, what you need to remember is actually monitoring. And if you type this in Google, you will find thousands of solutions, I would guess. Maybe not thousands, but there is a lot of things that you can pick and find your best, that suits you best.
Okay. And do you have any numbers about how the monitoring affects the clients? For example, it's more traffic, right? Because you need to send us logs and stuff, and the web applications are actually served to clients, so they need to download more code, so they are paying for more traffic, the internet traffic. So do you have any numbers about that?
Yeah, I don't have numbers, but I never had an issue with that. And those SDKs that you load are pretty optimized in that. They use like low priority queues. If you are using monitoring for mobiles, they tend to cache or save the data and eventually push it when you are using Wi-Fi to save your networking. And the real problem with monitoring may be actually different. It won't affect client that much, but you will pay a lot for that when you are actually reporting a lot of data. So this is issue we actually had, not the issue that client is actually affected and app is really slow because we load some SDK. But when you when you log a lot of things, then actually costs a lot, and then you reduce it, so there is no problem with actually affecting client.
So how did you approach that? Like, what were you like? How did you find the candidates to like reduce logs? For example, this log is not needed. We can remove that and that and that, so we reduce the costs.
So you essentially reduce traces, and actually distributed tracing can cost a lot. So this was our approach. But this was in other costly solution, and during this time we tried to move to cheaper one. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.